Good afternoon, America. You're listening once again to the voice of the American dissident. This is my second broadcast back on the air, and I'm happy to be with everybody again. Last night's broadcast got quite a good response amongst my friends in Facebook, and hopefully they'll share the video and pass it along, and hopefully I can get this channel embedded in some Patriot websites and get it on Roku, because I intend to expand my viewers. And I'm going to stick with current events since we're in the presidential election season, and there's been a lot of buzz about Donald Trump lately, and then excitement amongst the American people that he could go on to win the Republican nomination and become President of the United States. My contention is that Donald Trump may have a good message for the American people, or he might just be a distraction, because my contention is that Donald Trump will go nowhere in presidential politics. For the simple fact of the matter that for me, being 23 years awake, I've had ample time to study everything, and some of the things that I've found in the course of my research, a lot of you might find very strange, very weird, and you might not believe it, but nevertheless it is true. There exists in the United States an oligarchy. Presidents are not, ladies and gentlemen, elected. They are selected. They are selected by blood and birthright. The office of President of the United States has always been reserved for a male with the most maternal links royally to the British Isles. All presidents, save one, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with this, Martin Van Buren, are descended from one man, King John of England. And if you do not believe that, and if you don't believe what I say, I have the book right here. It's entitled Burke's Presidential Families of the United States of America, and I've told my friends, and you can see it right here on Facebook, to get the book and read it. It's easy to find if you do a search, and again I will read the title. It's Burke's Presidential Families of the United States of America. It's the second edition, and this book was published in 1975, and it goes all the way up to Ronald Reagan. And unfortunately, Burke's Peerage must know that a lot of people are catching on, because their current edition, they want to charge $1,200 for a brand new book, and nobody will obviously pay that kind of money for a book like that. I wish I had the money and I'd have it in my hands, because, ladies and gentlemen, Barack Obama, our current president, is also in these bloodlines. People focus on the fact that he, rightly so, is not eligible to be president. His father was born in Kenya, and so was he. He's an African. But his mother, ladies and gentlemen, was white. And she and he are intimately connected to these bloodlines. My contention is that there's 17 people in the race for the Republican nomination, and my contention is that there is really two people in the race for the Republican nomination, and that is Jeb Bush and that is Scott Walker. And based upon my research for 23 years, and if I'm wrong, I'm only human, that Scott Walker is going to be the next president of the United States, and that I'm going to lay it all on the table, and that Jeb Bush is going to be his running mate, because those two gentlemen contain the most royal genes in this race. Everybody's afraid of Hillary Rodham Clinton becoming president, and she will go nowhere. The surname Rodham appears nowhere in this book. The surname Walker, ladies and gentlemen, is prominent in this book. And I will in the course of this broadcast, read where that name is found in the lineages of the presidents. So we are going to go to a website, and I want to play this for you because a lot of people in this country are awake and they're looking at the wrong information. And I'm going to go to the 3D mix because I think it's a lot better. And I'm going to play this first tape for everybody. And we're going to begin.
Now that we know Vice President Dick Cheney and Senator Barack Obama are distant cousins.
In my book, there's a lot of genealogical research, going back, Dick's family, my family, these heroic and amazing tales of people who went west. But one of the things I discovered is that Dick and Barack Obama are 8th cousins. What? Is that an amazing thing? Yes, if you go back 8 generations, they have a common ancestor.
The New York Post decided to check into the genealogy of President Bush, and his family tree has people talking.
Many of the United States presidents have blood relations with each other. The Bush lineage has blood ties to a great number of former presidents. George Washington, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses Grant, Rutherford Hayes, James Garfield, Grover Cleveland, Teddy Roosevelt, William Taft, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford.
We all know his father, but what about his cousins? Check out this family tree, done with research by Ancestry.com. Let me take you through this, branch by branch. Vice President Dick Cheney, the man who's only a heartbeat away from the presidency, is actually a blood relation. He's President Bush's 9th cousin once removed. Cheney's cousin Barack Obama is also Bush's 11th cousin, and the 9th cousin of Brad Pitt.
In either of those first 2 books, though, who knew you and Dick Cheney cousins?
Listen, I don't think I'm going to family reunion. I don't know how I'll be greeted.
Michael Tessarian points out in his work that Bush is closely related to every European monarch on and off the throne, and has kinship with every member of Britain's royal family. Bush's family tree can be documented as far back as the early 15th century. He has a direct descent from Henry III and from Henry VIII's sister Mary Tudor. He is also descended from Charles II of England.
What if we were to tell you that American presidents aren't chosen by ballot, but instead by blood? That's right. The candidate with the bluest blood has won the race for president every time. And according to a man who writes things on the internet, 33 U.S. presidents are descendants of Emperor Charlemagne.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Who is this?
And it doesn't stop there. These guys aren't just related to royalty, they're related to each other.
But we're only just getting started. President Lincoln was President Bush's 7th cousin 5 times removed, and Bush shared more than just a ballot with John Kerry. That's right, they're 9th cousins twice removed. Princess Diana was Bush's 11th cousin twice removed.
But, these folks have been doing all these genealogies on me, and they've found all sorts of strange connections.
This has got to be the strangest thing.
Well, listen, if you go back far enough, you got all kinds of crooks and thieves in your family.
Incest was practiced by ancient Egyptian royalty. Mothers married sons and brothers married sisters to keep the power and the money all in the family. Like their Pharaonic ancestors, the British monarchy have a long history of incestuous inbreeding.
And then there's this bombshell.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Sure, she may have been singing to JFK, but what about GWB? He is, after all, her 9th cousin, 3 times removed.
Clinton's related to Ford, Bush is related to Cheney, and guess who Cheney's related to? That's right, Barack Obama.
What did you make of that story? For those who don't know this, so Lynn Cheney, the vice president's wife, has been doing some genealogy connected to her latest book, and lo and behold, way back, 8 generations ago, you and Mr. Cheney apparently have some distant relative in connect. What did you make of that story when it came?
I actually knew about it because somebody had done some genealogy before, and they had sent it to me, this long sheet, and had all these famous names, Mark Twain and this and that and the other, and then Dick Cheney, and I took a pause. I just said, well, as long as he's okay with it, I'm okay with it too, because I'm not going to stop talking about these messed up policies in Iraq. Just because your cousin. Yeah, we're not kissing cousins.
And we also find that George W. Bush is a direct descendant of Godfrey the Bullion. Godfrey was the first king of Jerusalem after he recaptured it from the Saracens, which was the name for the Islamic faith during the Middle Ages. It is interesting to note that the current occupation of the United States in the Middle East was re-established by the same family, George Bush Sr. in 1991, and again by George Bush Jr. in 2003. George Bush Jr. is then found to be a cousin to both opposing candidates of his 2 terms in office, Al Gore and John Kerry. Democratic President Barack Obama also has blood ties with George W. Bush, as well as Gerald Ford, Lyndon Johnson, Harry Truman, James Madison, and the British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill. On the opposing side of the 2008 presidential ballot, John McCain is descended from Robert the Bruce, King William I of Scotland, and also Godfrey the Bullion.
He's also related to Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, even Pocahontas, and Vlad the Impaler.
Well, Mitt Romney and Mike Huckabee are 10th cousins once removed, also known as kissing cousins. And Rudy Giuliani? He's just related to the mob.
Holy shit.
What about Hillary? Well, she's 10th cousins with Madonna and 9th cousins with Angelina Jolie.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
And of course, Barack Obama has said he doesn't think he and Cheney are kissing cousins, but Brad Pitt says if it's true, he's in great company.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
And when it was in Rome, that's when we had the creation of the Roman Empire and the creation of the Roman Church that became Christianity as we know it. I want to pick 3 secret societies up that were formed around the time of the Crusades. In the 1100s they were formed and through the 1200s. One of them was called the Teutonic Knights. Another one, the Knights Hospitaller of St. John of Jerusalem.
This crusade, one of the most massive, sweeping in history, was actually orchestrated by a secret brotherhood, the Priory of Sion and the Knights Templar.
19th century, artifacts and things were found, signs were found that the Templars had been under Temple Mount. However, something changed very quickly after around 9 years, because a couple of these guys came back to France and started signing up these aristocratic families of Europe. They clearly knew something big time.
The papacy declared these Priory Knights, these Knights Templar, of limitless power. By the 1300s, the Templars had grown too powerful. All across Europe, the Pope had declared the Knights Templar Satan worshippers. Said God had charged him with cleansing the earth of these heretics. The plan went off like clockwork. The Templars were all but exterminated. The date was October 13th, 1307, Friday. Friday the 13th.
And they went runabout. They almost certainly went to the Americas, because the knowledge of the Americas existed and goes back a long way in the secret knowledge line.
Alan Weishaupt forms a secret society known as the Order of the Illuminati.
Charles Taze Russell, who created the Jehovah's Witness movement, along with others, Merovingian bloodline, buried under a pyramid in America. Joseph Smith, who started the Mormon Church, which is an Illuminati front, big time in Salt Lake City, Merovingian bloodline.
The secret meeting of the world's power elite. At Yale University, the scions of America's first families confessed their sexual exploits from a gruesome coffin. In a smoke-filled room, a handful of power brokers manipulate the global economy.
On May 14th, 1948, the state of Israel is reborn.
Personally, I do not believe that the Bible addresses such issues as
Fascism comes out of the Roman Empire,
because these rods symbolize individuality tied together, ruled by the axe head here.
You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything. Well, what's wrong with having it good for a change? And they're going to let us have it good if we just help them. They're going to leave us alone. Let's make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life, too. Now, I know you want it. Hell, everybody does. Do it to your own kind. What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.
Satan's greatest trick was convincing man he didn't exist.
You see, ladies and gentlemen, what if presidents were not selected by ballot, but selected by blood? And I'm going to go to an article that supports this contention. We have from the Daily Mail. In this article, it doesn't have a date on it that I can see. But this article leads up, is ruling in the genes. All presidents bar one are directly descended from a medieval English king. 12-year-old girl created family tree linking 42 of the 43 U.S. presidents to King John of England, who signed the Magna Carta in 1215. Only 8th president, Martin Van Buren, was not related to John. Oh, and I guess it was published August the 4th in 2012. What do Barack Obama, Thomas Jefferson, George W. Bush, and the other past U.S. presidents have in common? Besides holding the coveted title of Commander-in-Chief, it appears that all of them but one are cousins. The remarkable discovery was made by a 12-year-old Bridget Ann d'Aubignon, and that name is real famous in history, ladies and gentlemen. D'Aubignon is a famous name in the history of France, of Salinas, California, who created a groundbreaking family tree that connected 42 of the 43 U.S. presidents to one common and rather unexpected ancestor, King John of England. They'll all have that trait of wanting power, d'Aubignon told the station WFMY. And here she is, ladies and gentlemen, and she linked them all. She's got a nice little chart here, linking all the presidents to one another. Budding genealogist Bridget Ann d'Aubignon created a family tree that connected 42 of the 43 U.S. presidents to one common ancestor. And here's another picture of her with her nice plaque that she created. King John, also known as John Lackland, is renowned for signing the Magna Carta in 1215, which limited the monarch's power and help from the British Parliament. John's other claim to fame or infamy is that he was depicted as a villain in the Robin Hood tales. D'Aubignon, a 7th grader at Monte Vista Christian School in Watsonville, started the project in hopes of tracing back her own bloodline in France. But somewhere along the way she decided to take her genealogical quest to the highest level. In order to create the family tree, the 12-year-old spent months scouring through over 500,000 names in search of the presidential Adam. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, that is a feat, and I commend this little girl for doing this. She spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours doing research. How many of you people out there in internet land or in your daily life take the time to actually do something? How many of you people have this book in your home library? Do any of you have this book in your library? I have it. It's real. It's right here. It's Burke's Presidential Families of the United States of America. In order to create the family tree, the 12-year-old spent months scouring through over 500,000 names in search of the presidential Adam. Her 80-year-old grandfather, who has been tracing roots from nearly 6 decades, helped her make the presidential links. D'Aubignon started with the first U.S. president, George Washington. She traced both the male and female family lines to make the connection. Prior to D'Aubignon's discovery, genealogists were only able to link 22 families of presidents, likely because they only focused on male bloodlines. The only former commander-in-chief not linked to King John is the 8th President, Martin Van Buren, who had Dutch roots. The teen also found that she is the 18th cousin of President Obama. She even wrote to her newfound relative a letter to share her findings with him. So far, however, D'Aubignon said she received only a generic response from the White House. And here's a nice picture of Martin Van Buren, the 8th President of the United States. D'Aubignon created a poster of the presidential family tree and is selling signed copies of it in hopes of raising enough money to make a trip to Washington, D.C. The middle school student says her goal is to hand-deliver a replica of her family tree to the president. I think we just all go back somewhere. It's just a matter of proving it, she said. Well, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we all go back someplace. And some of the arguments and debates I've gotten with people in the internet who like to ridicule these things, they like to say that we're all related to one another. Well, that's probably true. But how many people actually become president of the United States, ladies and gentlemen? Is it any coincidence that 2 Adams, 2 Harrisons, 2 Roosevelts, and 2 Bushes happen to become president? And we might have a 3rd Bush, but I don't believe so, because people are catching on in the world. They're catching on in this country. And I'm going to prove my contention that I don't believe that Jeb Bush will become president of the United States. I believe that his cousin Scott Walker will. And that is the end of that article. And I am going to go to this girl's research. And you know what's really sad, ladies and gentlemen, is that a 12-year-old girl, a 12-year-old schoolgirl, did all of this research, and some of you people who claim to be an adult don't know what you absolutely don't know what you're talking about when you talk politics. You support this guy, you support that guy, and you think that you have a voice. And there's few of my friends in Facebook land and on the internet that agree with my contention. You don't have a voice. And it's sad, it really is, because the elections since George Washington have been rigged. That's a fact. They created this country for a peculiar purpose. They came from the old world to the new world, and they gave the American people, they wanted to give the common man a chance to see if he could govern himself, to be a king or a queen in his or her own right. But they understood, quoting a man that I admired very much, William Cooper, they understood human nature better than any man that lived in their time or any man that will ever live on the face of this earth. They knew that human beings, being the way that we are, would gladly give up our freedom in exchange for something that we thought we could get for nothing, to get for free. And there's only one thing that is free, ladies and gentlemen, it is freedom. And I'm going to play this video of her research.
It's a great thing for history.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, William Howard Taft, and President Barack Obama. One young girl traced them all back to one common ancestor.
They're all cousins and all grandsons of John Lackland.
It's the first family tree of its kind, pouring through more than 500,000 names for months. 12-year-old Bridge-Ann D'Aubignon discovered that all the U.S. presidents, except Martin Van Buren, are related to the former King of England, John Lackland Plantagenet, signer of the Magna Carta in 1215.
Mildred Reed is his first great-grandmother on George Washington, and on Obama, Mildred Reed is the 10th great-grandmother.
It started as an assignment to research her own lineage, tracing it back to roots in France. But Bridge-Ann wanted to branch out.
Well, I think we just all go back somewhere. It's just a matter of proving it.
She started with George Washington, but unlike other professional genealogists that only looked at the male family lines, Bridge-Ann was able to link the presidents together using both male and female ancestry. Before this, historians had only been able to link 22 family trees.
She kind of created a triumph of women's studies here.
Bridge-Ann also figured out she's an 18th cousin of President Obama. something she hopes to be able to share with him in person.
I've written a letter to Obama, but I just gotten standard reply. I hope to meet the president and explain it to him.
In Paso Robles, Adam Rakusin, your Central Coast News.
It's a great...
I think that the American people who claim to be adults in this country should be terribly ashamed of themselves. We should be ashamed of ourselves as a people, that a little girl, a 12-year-old girl, ladies and gentlemen, can prove something, spend hours and hours and hours of research proving something, and we all sit back in Facebook land or wherever we are, and we fight back and forth between who we think is going to be president, and we're just denying the truth that's right in front of your face. We need to wake up, and the American people, they need to grow up. And I've been asked who I support in the presidential election. I'll tell you this, I support my next door neighbor to be president, because as long as we keep electing these clowns, the system that they have created over the centuries is going to remain intact. That is a fact. And I'm going to go to another article. And this comes from the lefties. This comes from a left-wing article, and sometimes even left-wing news outlets tell the truth. This is from London, October 25th, and I don't know what year it was in America. I really don't care, but the lead into this article is Royal Red Carpet is Path to the White House. When it comes to picking the winner in the American presidential race, Britain's leading chroniclers of royal ancestors say they have never been wrong. And they haven't been wrong, America. They've picked them every time. Not once in almost 200 years. Based on facts gleaned from the old scrolls and dusty archives of Burke's Peerage, researchers of royal bloodline since 1826, the Brits wager it would be Texas Governor George W. Bush. And he did win, didn't he, America? The presidential candidate with the most royal genes and chromosomes has, up to now, always won the White House, says researchers at Burke's Peerage. They say Bush's blue blood runs thicker than Vice President Al Gore's. In fact, it trumps the royal titles of every other president to date, including his father's. It seems George W. has inherited his mother's deep blood blue line. His Royal Highness King W. Burke's publishing director, Harold Brooks Baker, says Bush's royal connections are startling. Bush is closely related to every European monarch, both on and off the throne, says Brooks Baker. Some of the governor's royal kin include Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen Mother, Duchess Sarah Ann, Fergie Ferguson, and even the late Princess Diana. His most prominent ancestor may be England's King Charles II, who shared the governor's vision of a strong military. Going back nearly 1,000 years, Brooks Baker points out both the Bush and Pierce families. Barbara Bush's maiden name is Pierce, and she's a relative, a direct descendant of Franklin Pierce, were high society. Not one member of his family was working class, middle class, or even middle class, he notes. Al's family hardly peasants. Gore's family members weren't exactly peasants. The vice president's family tree includes Charlemagne and 3 Holy Roman emperors. And a good fight wouldn't frighten the vice president's most famous ancestor, English Edward I, best known today as the king who defeated then executed Braveheart. Excuse me, I scrolled a little bit too far. Edward was also said to be very popular with the ladies. His descendant Al Gore certainly won the hearts of many American ladies with that kiss he publicly planted on wife Tipper. Although Gore is running a bit behind Bush in the European royal count, his bloodline runs close to some American homegrown nobility, including Thomas Jefferson, Daniel Boone, and Buffalo Bill Cody. Trump card. Buckingham Palace politely declined to comment on the recorded royal connections of either candidate. This sort of thing's happened every time there's an American presidential election, scoffed one palace official. But if the Burke's Peerage prediction has its doubters, the company doesn't hesitate to defend its crowning legacy. You just can't write off 200 years of accurate predictions, says Brooks Baker, pointing out Mike Dukakis learned about the royal factor the hard way. The 1988 Democratic nominee and son of Greek immigrants had no connection to any European royal thrones, and he lost in a landslide. October surprise. Although Bush maintains a clear royal advantage, Burke's Peerage claims to know why the race is so close. Never in the history of the United States have two presidential candidates been as well endowed with royal alliances. However, the royal researchers are hedging their bets, saying their dig through the documents continues. Brooks Baker says Gore still has a chance to prove he's royal enough for the top job. Like Jimmy Carter, it is possible that he is the product of several royal love children of the past, Brooks Baker says. Those connections are harder to trace. Thus, Burke's peerage leaves open the possibility for an October surprise in either a Bush or Gore coronation November 7th. And we know, ladies and gentlemen, that rest is history. The fight in 2000 was a real contentious one, and we had all these people who are once again ignorant of how our government is run with their little signs. You know, my mentor, Bill Cooper, he did a show on this. They had their signs, Gore got more, Gore got more. The American people have no idea that you do not popularly elect a president. When you vote for president, you vote for the electors of your state, and the electors of the state meet at the Electoral College, and they are the ones that elect the president. And the founders, for better or for worse, that's the way that they wanted it. They wanted a check and balance between the people, and they wanted a balance between the people and the government. They did not want the American people to elect a dictator, but I can see a point of a friend of mine. They may have created the Electoral College so they can continue to control the system, but this show, and there's plenty of information on the internet for people to find, that we can break free of this as long as enough people care, and as long as people are willing to open up their minds and think outside the box, America. And in case you don't know, I like to chew snuff because I'm a redneck, and I really don't care if you like it or not, because this is my house, this is my broadcast, and I'll do whatever I please. And I'm going to go to another article, and this is from Right Guardia. I'm not going to go to this one yet. I'm going to go to another video, and I'm going to play this, and this is further proof, and this is on another quote-unquote lefty news channel. See, even the left, they tell the truth once in a while, and they put it up in front of your face, and through the decades the American people have been so dumbed down that they don't even pay attention to what's important.
Dick Cheney. Today's New York Times has some more family tree news. Senator McCain is a sixth cousin of First Lady Laura Bush. Senator Clinton's notable relatives are Jack Kerouac, Madonna, Celine Dion, Alanis Morissette, and Camilla Parker Bowles, the wife of Prince Charles. And here's her Hollywood branch. Senator Clinton is a ninth cousin, twice removed, somebody tell me what that means, of actress Angelina Jolie. Not to be outdone, Senator Obama has a common ancestor, 11 generations removed, with actor Brad Pitt. But the big news for Obama brings us to tonight's hardball big number. All Dick Cheney jokes aside, Obama may just have something presidential in him. It's not just his fire in the belly. According to the New England Historic Genealogical Society, Obama is related to not one, not two, but at least 6 U.S. presidents. Both Presidents Bush, Gerald Ford, LBJ, Harry Truman, and James Madison, who wrote the Constitution. 6 U.S. presidents in Obama's extended family. Tonight's hardball big number. Up next, 8 years ago, John McCain was the darling of...
You see, America, it's right there, right in front of your face. Barack Obama is of royal blood. He's George Bush's cousin. He didn't get elected president on accident. Our presidents are groomed from childhood, from the very age that they're old enough to understand, and they understand from a very early age what they're going to attain. And I am going to leave that, and I am going to go again. Now this is from those, this article is from those on quote-unquote the right. Paper, all presidents bar one are descended from one English king. What do Barack Obama, Thomas Jefferson, George Bush, and the other past U.S. presidents have in common besides holding the coveted title of Commander-in-Chief? It appears that all of them but one are cousins. The remarkable discovery was made by 12-year-old Bridge Ann D'Avignon of Salinas, California, who created a groundbreaking family tree that connected 42 of 43 U.S. presidents to one common and rather unexpected ancestor, King John of England. They all have the trait of wanting power, D'Avignon told the station WFMY. Budding genealogist Bridget Ann D'Avignon created a family tree that connected 42 of 43 U.S. presidents to one common ancestor. History detective, it took D'Avignon several months to search through more than 500,000 names and trace the male and female lineages of American leaders. They repeated that twice, so I'm going to go down. King John, also known as John Lackland, is renowned for signing the Magna Carta in 1215, which limited the monarch's power and helped form the British Parliament. John's other claim to fame of infamy is that he was depicted as the villain in the Robin Hood tales. Common grandfather, the 12-year-old traced the lineages of nearly all of the U.S. presidents to King John, the signer of the Magna Carta. Common D'Avignon, a 7th grader, at Monte Vista Christian School in Watsonville, started the project in hopes of tracing back her own bloodline in France, but somewhere along the way she decided to take her genealogical quest to the highest level. In order to create the family tree, the 12-year-old spent months scouring through over 500,000 names in search of the presidential Adam. Her 80-year-old grandfather, who has been tracing roots for nearly 6 decades, helped her make the presidential links. D'Avignon started with the first U.S. president, George Washington. She traced both the male and female family lines to make the connection. Prior to D'Avignon's discovery, genealogists were only able to link 22 families of presidents, likely because they only focused on male bloodlines. The only former commander-in-chief not linked to King John is the 8th president, Martin Van Buren, who had Dutch roots. The teen also found out that she is the 18th cousin of President Obama. She even wrote to her newfound relative a letter to share her findings with him. So far, however, D'Avignon said she received only a generic response from the White House. Well, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, she's never going to receive a proper response from the president because Barack Obama knows all about these things and he's not going to give it any credence or give it any legitimacy by responding to this little girl. But my hat is off to her. And I think that your hat should be tipped to her because she, a 12-year-old girl, is a true American in my book. She's did her research, she's did her homework, and she's always going to have my applause. And we are going to go, I want to see what I want to do now. We are going to close out this one, and we are going to go to what I believe is going to be the defining moment in this presidential election. There is, as I said, 17 people running on the Republican side, and 15 people on the Republican side are there for entertainment purposes only. There's only 2 people in this presidential race on the Republican side, and that is Jeb Bush, and the other one is Scott Walker. No matter how much you refuse to believe, I already have given you plenty of information that it is my belief by the time the Florida primary is over that Scott Walker and Jeb Bush will be the last 2 men standing, and they're going to duke it out, and I believe that Scott Walker is going to win the nomination, and I believe he's going to be president of the United States. So we are going to close out ABC's article, and I'm going to go to Right Guardia. This is Right Guardia, blogspot.com. And let me see here, we'll go back up, and I'm going to put the 3D mix on so you can see. Scott Walker related to George W. Bush. Wisconsin Governor Walker, a member of the Bush-Walker clan. A cousin of Wisconsin's unpopular Republican governor, Scott Walker, who is running in a rare recall election, has informed WMR that Walker is a member of the Bush-Walker family of former Presidents George H.W. Bush and George Walker Bush. George Walker's cousin does not support his cousin's gubernatorial bid in Wisconsin. Scott Walker, like George Herbert Walker and George Walker Bush, is a descendant of George Herbert Walker, a wealthy banker originally from St. Louis. Walker eventually became the president of the W.A. Harriman and Company in New York. And through your research, ladies and gentlemen, through my research, the W.A. Harriman Company features prominently in many conspiracy writers' books. They are instrumental in helping the Nazis during World War II. They've been involved in just about every war in the 20th century, and they were involved in every war in the 20th century. They've been intimately involved in creating the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the W.A. Harriman Company was a globalist dynasty. Walker's daughter Dorothy married Prescott Bush. Dorothy and Prescott were the parents of George H.W. Bush. George Walker owned a number of railroads, including the Missouri Pacific Railroad, that employed Walker relatives throughout the West, including Colorado. In 2010, Scott Walker jokingly referred to George W. Bush as his, quote, cousin, unquote, because of their close political views. And he wasn't joking about it, ladies and gentlemen. He may have been joking about it because he knows. He's joking about it to you because he knows he's pulling the wool over your eyes, because you don't know anything. And I'm not saying that in an offensive way. I'm trying to wake you up. You don't know anything about politics. You think you do, and you don't. I didn't know anything about politics either. I was a die-in-the-wool Republican voter. I thought that the Republican Party would be the savior of America, and that if we elected a few more Republicans to office, that they would fix our problems. And today we have a Republican Congress in power. They control 31 state legislatures completely. They control over 30 governorships. But the system that has been created, ladies and gentlemen, over the decades, the system that robs you blind, the system that turns you into a slave, remains intact. The system remains intact, ladies and gentlemen. Governor Walker is obviously trying to downplay his family connection to Bush, especially before the June 5th recall election. And I'm going to close this out. And I'm going to go to another article. This comes from U.S. News and World Report. And you see here, this is a lefty news article, but what does it say here? This is real revealing. There's 17 people in the race. And when was this published? This is March 18th, 2015. Does it say the clash between Trump? Does it say that and Walker, the clash between Trump and Bush? Does it say the clash between Carson and Bush, or the clash between Walker and Carson, or any other two? No, it says the coming clash between Jeb Bush and Scott Walker. You see, these people, these people are all in the know. U.S. News and World Report, they're in the know. They know what's going on. And I've told people in Facebook that there'll be two men standing in the presidential election. And right here, right in front of your face, as I said, sometimes the lefties tell the truth. It's the coming clash between Jeb Bush and Scott Walker. Two people who happen to have royal genes, the royal bloodline. They're both related. And these are the two men here, ladies and gentlemen, that are going to be left standing in the presidential race. The contrast between the two premier GOP candidates is already being forged behind the scenes, ladies and gentlemen. What did Jesus Christ say? I've always spoken in public, and in secret I have said nothing. Something that goes on behind the scenes, ladies and gentlemen, is only evil. The first shot fired came in the form of an email to reporters a few hours after Governor Scott Walker concluded his remarks at the Iowa Agricultural Summit on the first Saturday of this month. The Wisconsin governor had somewhat surprisingly come out in favor of the renewable fuel standard, which requires that a minimum amount of alternative fuel like Iowa-produced ethanol be used in gasoline and diesel sold in the U.S. And I'm not going to go into the rest of it, but it's an article about ethanol subsidies, and there might have been something in this article that I wanted to read to you, and I think there was. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to highlight this right here. This is U.S. News and World Report by this person that did this article. Frankly, just because he's related to the Bushes, that doesn't sell me, he says. We need someone younger. So here we have proof by somebody that's an insider in the journalistic fields that admits that Scott Walker is in fact related to the Bush family. And I'm going to go back to my camera here, and we are going to go to Real Clear Politics. There's been a lot of fanfare and a lot of buzz over Donald Trump, and I look to real sources. I don't look to news articles about who's ahead and who's not ahead. I look to hard data, quote unquote, polling data. And I don't know how many of you people look at Real Clear Politics, but I look at it just about every day. And here we have the 2016 presidential race, which has Trump on top. But you know something? This information isn't even highly accurate, because how could Trump be leading nationally against Hillary Clinton in the polls, and according to some people, and according to Real Clear Politics, the spread between Hillary Clinton and the so-called frontrunner Trump is 10.4%. The recent polling data gives Hillary Clinton 51 to 45%. Fox News has Clinton ahead 47 to 42. Quinnipiac has Clinton ahead 48-36. Now, the two people that I say are going to be left standing in this race, you have Jeb Bush with a 3.4 spread in favor of Clinton. But recent polling data, and CNN, they're always biased. They're always going to have the Democrat ahead. Fox News will always have him ahead. But Quinnipiac is a nonpartisan polling organization, and their last poll, and these are registered voters, mind you, they have Bush ahead by 1. And in this stage of the game, when a Republican this early in the election cycle is polling ahead of the Democrat, it's never good for a Democrat even this far out. We even have Marco Rubio, a man who's not eligible to be president, with a little bit favorable spread than Walker, but he does not have royal genes. Fox News has Rubio ahead of Clinton by 2 points, and his spread is 3.5. And I'm just trying to be fair to people out there, that I'm trying to give both sides of the story. But we do have polling data on Walker versus Clinton, and of course McClatchy, Maris, and CNN have Clinton ahead of Walker by 52 to 46, and we have McClatchy, Maris 48 to 41. But Quinnipiac, who's unbiased, they have Clinton ahead only by 1. And it's my contention, ladies and gentlemen, that in the next few months you're going to see the data shift, and you're going to see the data shift in favor of both Bush and Walker. And I'm going to go to the camera. And as I said, ladies and gentlemen, here is the definitive proof in this book, Who Always Becomes President of the United States. And I'm going to go back. This book is way over 600 pages long, and in the back it has a wonderful appendix, and it lists all the surnames, of all the people that are intermarried in the presidential family. And Hillary Clinton's name, married or maiden name, is Rodham. And in this book, the surname Rodham does not appear at all. But if you go, and we will go to find the Bush surname, and I'm going to look, and it's interesting because they do not have the Bush. Oh yes, they do. They have the Bush surname, and it only appears twice in this book. On page 291, we have the Bush surname, and the name appears, and I will find it. The Bush surname appears in the lineage of President Abraham Lincoln. And I got to go back to the appendix again that lists the surnames. And the name Bush, in page 443, I believe we will get 434. Let me see, 448, 47. The surname Bush appears in the lineage of President Wilson. Now, I'm going to go to the surname Walker, ladies and gentlemen, in the appendix. And what's real fascinating about this book, it also has the lineages of Confederate President Jefferson Davis, because he was also in the bloodlines as well. And I'm going to go find the surname Walker. The surname Walker, ladies and gentlemen, is way more prominent in this book of presidential lineages than Bush ever was. His name appears in this book. The surname Walker appears in this book on page 22, 25, and that would be the Adams presidents. 62 and 83, that would be the Harrison presidents. 85 and 90, and I'm going to go find that. Page 85 and 85. His lineage appears, the surname Walker appears in the lineage of Thomas Jefferson. Page 90. Thomas Jefferson has a very extensive genealogy, and we are still on the lineage of Thomas Jefferson. He has thousands of living descendants here yet in the United States. Thousands. Page 93 and 94, which I believe that is still the lineage of Thomas Jefferson. Page 96, which is still Thomas Jefferson. Page 196, we will go to page 196 and find that where his lineage appears. The surname Walker appears in the lineage of William Henry Harrison, which will also appear in the lineage of Benjamin Harrison, because William Henry Harrison, ladies and gentlemen, was the grandfather of President Benjamin Harrison. The surname Walker appears in page 222 of this book, in the lineage of President James Knox Polk. Page 232 of this book, the surname Walker appears, again in the lineage of James Knox Polk. Page 243 of this book, the descendants of Zachary Taylor. The surname Walker appears in the Zachary Taylor bloodline. Page 346, his descendants will find the surname Walker in the descendants and the lineage of President James Garfield. Page 387 of Burke's book, Again, the surname Walker appears in the lineage of Benjamin Harrison. Page 412 is the lineage of Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Roosevelt were cousins. So you see that the surname Walker is prominent. The surname Walker is prominent in presidential politics. There's no denying that fact. It's interesting too because Fritz Springermeyer, a man who I've talked to a couple of times, he wrote a book called Bloodlines of the Illuminati. In his research, the surname Walker appears in past governors. There has been no less than 9 people with the surname Walker who has served in one state or another in the capacity of the governorships. This is not a coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at the state of Ohio, there's been no less than 3 people named Taft that have served as governor. President Taft, his son, Robert Taft, served as governor, and his grandson, Robert Taft, about 15 years ago was elected governor and served as governor of the state of Ohio. These families control politics. It's no coincidence that these people run for office. It's no coincidence that they get elected. Again, people ask me who I support to be president of the United States. I support my next door neighbor to run for president of the United States, because if we continue down this path, we're going to continue down the path to our own destruction. It is my contention, and I'm laying this all out on the line, that Scott Walker is going to be the next president of the United States, and his cousin, Jeb Bush, is going to be the vice president of the United States. We are seeing a play out of 1980 all over again. We had George Bush running, and he was smeared in the media and smeared by the American people as an establishment candidate. So the great actor Ronald Reagan, his cousin, became president, and George Bush became his vice president. The Republican Party knows that they have to carry the Hispanic vote in order to get elected. And they know that there are people like me and many thousands of people, maybe millions of people in the United States that are catching on. And they know that we will not support a man like Jeb Bush to be president of the United States. But they can continue to fool us by giving us his cousin, Scott Walker, in his place. And Scott Walker, in order to quote unquote balance the ticket, will pick Jeb Bush, his cousin, as his running mate. I believe that Scott Walker will trounce whoever the Democratic nominee is, not because of his message, not because of his intelligence or his qualifications. He will become president of the United States based upon his genealogy, based upon his bloodline. He is a globalist. He already has people from the CFR working on his campaign. And if you don't know what the Council on Foreign Relations is, I suggest that you start researching. We, as a people, need to wake up what's happening in our country. Last night, despite the fact that I showed in clear proof that Ted Cruz is not eligible to be president, there's people who still want to be blind, and they still try to say that he can be, and he can't be. Truth is truth. It stands on its own merits. It's not debatable. If you can't see the truth, then you're blind. And we need to start educating our children, educating our family, educating our neighbors. That's what this broadcast is about. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help you think outside the box. Not see things as black and white, but see things as black and white with gray areas in between. If you can't do that, America will continue to suffer. And I'm tired of it. I've been awake for 23 years. I stumbled on this stuff all by accident, and I'm glad that I did, or I'd still be a stupid little sheep that paid more attention to goings on in my own little world than paying attention to what things that really should matter to the American people. And that concludes this broadcast. Thank you, and peace be with you.